Hello everybody, welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. I'm your host Aris Simatakos, and today we're here with previewing Group H of the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Now Portugal, Argentina, South Korea and Ghana. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's kick things off with one of the teams that is mostly anticipated heading into Qatar, and that is Portugal. Now, Portugal's World Cup qualification campaign actually didn't go as well as many people would expect. As we covered in Serbia's bit last episode, their group consisted of Republic of Ireland, Luxembourg, Azerbaijan, and Serbia, as I've just mentioned. They actually finished second in that group from those 8 games, winning 5, drawing 2, and losing 1, losing the final game or in the final minute with the final kick, pretty much of that qualification campaign. This meant that they went through to the playoffs, where they versed Turkey, where they dispatched them 3-1 with relative ease, before moving to North Macedonia in the final of that playoff bracket, where they did win 2-1 through a brace from Bruno Fernandes. Now, take a look at the European Championship campaign. They were drawn in the group of death. They started things off with a 3-0 win to Hungary. However, they did lose their next game 4-2 to Portugal before drawing 2-2 to France. They did, however, advance as one of the better third place teams from that European Championship, and they did verse Belgium in the round of 16, where they did lose 1-0. So it was a pretty unceremonious way to be knocked out of the Euros, and something that Portugal should be looking to make amends of heading into the World Cup. When we take a look at their last World Cup campaign back in 2018, they were drawn in that tough group with Spain, Morocco, and Iran. They did draw to Spain 3-3 in the first game, which is that game which we can all remember. That Ronaldo free kick in the 87th minute was something to behold, which was a sight to behold. They did beat Morocco in the next game before drawing to Iran. This saw them advance. They saw them advance to the round of 16, where they actually lost in the round of 16 to Uruguay 2-1, which is something that is very disappointing for them. Now, when we take a look at Portugal, the main man, of course, is Cristiano Ronaldo. His last World Cup, his last chance to get his hands on that elusive World Cup trophy, and Portugal's system is geared to get Ronaldo in the game as much as possible. He does play as a central striker, and the system is geared to get the best out of him. You have both wingers who are very close to him to get him involved in the play a lot more, and to not give him the burden of being isolated and having to do everything himself. Now, Portugal's ability to get the ball forward and be progressive through the middle of the park is something that is highlighted through their games. They do like to press very high, get the ball quickly, and then go through the middle before moving the ball out wide. Something that could be a little bit of a con heading into the tournament for Portugal, I should say, is the slightly less creative midfield than what they normally than what teams of their caliber should have. Now, of course, in the Euros they went with William Carvalho and Danilo Pereira as that double pivot in midfield. However, in recent times they have introduced the likes of Ruben Neves, Bruno Fernandes, João Moutinho as well into that midfield mix to add a little bit of creativity, as well as Renato Sanchez, who is having a fantastic season for PSG, and is one of the world's best midfield talents. So when you have these talents in midfield to get the ball out wide to the likes of João Felix, Diogo Jota, and other players who can really create, Rafael Leao as well is having a fantastic season for AC Milan. They are finally starting to get the best out of that system, to get the best out of Ronaldo. When we take a look at Portugal's fullbacks, this is another avenue of their side which can really get the best out of Ronaldo. They are very aggressive, very proactive, and very progressive. They do like to push high up the pitch and really get beyond the wingers and almost act as wingers themselves. This causes havoc for the opposition defenders, as they don't really know how to deal with such aggressive and such attacking fullbacks. They are kind of caught in no man's land, as well as being instructed to mark that their assigned winger, as well as having the fullback pushing on beyond them, is something that can cause havoc for the opposition defenders. However, when we take a look at Portugal, they should get through this group with relative ease. You'd think, obviously, Uruguay, South Korea, and Ghana do pose some threats, but with the talent that they have at their disposal, they should get through relatively unscathed, and they should really be looking to get Ronaldo that elusive World Cup. They definitely have the talent to do so. All their players are well experienced on the international stage, and I mean, football throws up some crazy stories. So if Ronaldo can get his hands on that World Cup trophy that has evaded him for his entire career with his final international tournament, maybe it's written in the stars for that to happen. Let's move on to the second team in Group H, and that is Uruguay. Now we'll take a look at Uruguay's road to the World Cup in Qatar. They finished third in the South American World Cup qualification group with 8 wins, 4 draws, and 6 losses. They actually finished on a 0 goal difference, scoring 22 and conceding 22 goals across those 18 games. When we take a look at their most recent continental tournament, of course the Copa America back last year, they lost in the quarterfinals on pens to Colombia, which is a slightly disappointing result. Although with a squad that is slowly starting to breed in some young talent from that little bit of a golden generation they had a couple of years ago, that was a not bad breeding ground for a result. When we take a look at their World Cup campaign 4 years ago, they won their first 4 games. They won all 3 of their games in the group before beating Portugal in the round of 16. However, they lost to France in the quarterfinals. Of course, the eventual winners France, which is a not bad result if you take all things considered. Now we'll take a look at the way that Uruguay will be looking to build up. When building up and attacking, Uruguay are excellent at ensuring that defensive players have a lot of options. They have a fantastic movement within between the lines. They have fantastic movement in their 4-4-2 formation, and they have the strikers drop deep. They have their wing backs push out wide. They have the midfielders drop in as well. So they have all this fantastic movement within the players and within the channels and within the half spaces. That they do have a lot of players to pass through, and they do like to build up from the back. Uruguay look to retain possession in the middle of the pitch as much as possible by creating this midfield diamond in a sense with those four midfielders in that 4-4-2 system. They do like to create a little bit of a diamond. Doing this also creates a fantastic foundation which doesn't allow them to be susceptible on the counter attack as well. With this diamond in midfield, they are very press resistant because they have a lot of options to pass to. Now, when they don't have possession, they are aggressive pressers, but they are very aggressive selective pressers in a sense. Now, they do like to press the man with the ball as much as possible, as well as man marking the rest of the pitch. Of course, with this 4-4-2 system, they obviously it does cover a lot of the pitch as well. It does cover a lot of the pitch with the 4-4-2 system. They can cover a lot of ground with very few players, so this allows them to not need to press as heavily as what other teams potentially need to. However, when the teams do advance the ball into the middle third, they do like to sit back and drop into a 5-3-2 system by getting as many numbers behind the ball as possible, by getting as many players surrounding the ball carrier as possible. It just restricts space and doesn't allow teams to press to play through them very, very effectively. They do like to sit very compact and very narrow in this 5 at the back system, forcing teams out wide to get crosses into the box. And when you have 5 centre halves, or when you have 3 centre halves and 5 defenders, it should be pretty easy to deal with crosses coming into the box. Now, when we take a look at Uruguay, what their expectations are heading into the tournament, it is once again kind of getting the best out of the players that they've got. Of course, with the likes of Darwin Núñez, Luis Suarez up front, with Federico Valverde playing in that central midfield role, or even on the right wing, depending on where he's used. They do have some players to shock some teams. However, they don't have a squad. They don't have the squad that they did have maybe 8 years ago in the 2014 World Cup, or even in the 2018 World Cup. They don't have the players that they potentially once did. So maybe getting through the group is something that they should be able to aim for. Getting further than that, I think should be a positive. And Uruguay definitely have the players to shock some teams heading into Qatar. However, I think we'll just have to wait and see what Uruguay can produce heading into the World Cup. So let's move on to the second last team in Group H, and that is South Korea. Now, when we take a look at South Korea's road to the World Cup in Qatar, they actually finished second in their group alongside Iran, the UAE, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. They finished with a plus 10 goal difference, having won 7 of their 10 games, drawing 2 and losing only 1 of them. When we take a look at their most recent continental tournament, they did obviously compete in the 2019 Asian Cup, and they fell in the quarterfinals to Qatar 1-0, despite having won all 4 of their games previously. Now, when we take a look at South Korea's the way that they play, they are like many Asian sides. They are very attacking, aggressive team, with the likes of Heung-min Son up front, who should be fit in time for the World Cup, having suffered a facial injury for Spurs. He should be fit heading into the World Cup. Heading into the World Cup in Qatar, he was obviously very, very crucial for South Korea back in 2018, despite them getting knocked out in the group stage. He did score that goal against Germany, where they did win 2-0, which was a massive win for them. However, with the way that South Korea do like to play, it is very aggressive, it is very assertive. They do like to get the ball high quickly with intrinsic attacking ball movement up to them more creative players who can then create an impact in the final third. They do like to set up in a 4-4-2 system. However, it is very flexible. It can float between that and a 4-2-3-1 because of various reasons, depending on the occasion, what team they're versing, the game state, and whether or not they are able to retain possession in that certain game. Now without the ball, this is potentially one of South Korea's main attributes, is that they do like to press very high and very intently early without the ball. As soon as the opposition start to build up in their defensive third, they like to press highly and aggressively. However, once the opposition does get the ball inside the middle third, and they do pass that first layer of that pressing trap, they do like to sit back in that 4-4-2 against more aggressive and more attacking and better opponents, I should say. South Korea are very flexible, very fluid in the way that they play, and with the attacking talents like Hyunmin Son and Kim Min Jae, who was our 1K player for every World Cup nation for South Korea, which is the video on the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel, which you can check out. He is going to be a fantastic player for South Korea this tournament. He will be their main defensive leader. He can play out from the back. He can really drive those standards and drive that attacking force forward for South Korea, as well as having Hyunmin Son up front, who is just a fantastic player. We all know just how good he is. So South Korea definitely have the ability to cause a shock heading into Qatar, and Portugal and Uruguay aren't sides that they should be intimidated by. They obviously did beat Germany 4 years ago, so they will go into this tournament believing that they can beat anyone on any given day. So South Korea are definitely a side that could cause some shocks heading into the World Cup in Qatar. So let's move on to the final team in Group H, and that is Ghana. Now, when we take a look at Ghana's road to the World Cup in Qatar, it actually was probably the most bizarre qualification campaigns of any side competing at the World Cup. They finished on equal points with South Africa. Both have played, obviously, 6 games in their group alongside Ethiopia and Zimbabwe. Both teams won 4. Both teams drew 1. Both teams lost 1. When they both played each other, both games ended 1-0 to the home side. However, and both teams ended on a +4 goal difference. However, Ghana's 7 goals scored compared to South Africa's 6 goals scored was the stat and was the kind of metric which got them through to the next round of qualification, which is absolutely bizarre, and actually got even more kind of crazy. They went on to versus Nigeria in the first leg at home, which they drew 0-0. They then went to Nigeria and then won and then drew the game 1-1, but then went through on away goals. So Ghana have definitely had some experience playing some tight games in the World Cup qualification campaign, so they will not be intimidated by any side heading into the tournament. When we take a look at the most recent African Cup of Nations campaign, it actually was pretty disappointing. They were drawn in a group with Gabon, Comoros, and Morocco. They did only draw 1 game, and that was against Gabon. They went on to lose against Morocco in the first group game and against Comoros in their final group game. Now, when we take a look at Ghana's history at World Cups, of course, we all go back to that 2010 World Cup campaign. It was, of course, held in South Africa, but Ghana represented the African continent fantastically. They went all the way to the quarterfinals before getting bundled out in absolutely heartbreaking circumstances by Uruguay on penalties. Now, of course, that side back in 2010 is completely different. I don't think there is one remaining player from that side heading into the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. However, when we take a look at their potential starting lineup, it is filled with some talent, with a lot of talent. In fact, of course, you have Thomas Partey and Mohamed Kudus playing in that double pivot in midfield in that 4-2-3-1 system. They're going to be Ghana's main cogs. However, when you have Sulemana, Andre Ayew, Jordan Ayew playing just behind Inaki Williams, there is more than enough talent, especially in that final third, to cause a lot of shocks. As typical with many African nations, they do rely on individual brilliance to get the job done. And when you have the likes of Inaki Williams, both Ayew brothers, Sulemana, who's a fantastic talent, they definitely have more than enough talent to cause some shocks on any given day. And when you have Thomas Partey and Kudus, who's playing fantastically in Netherlands this season, as well as Thomas Partey, who has found a new lease on life this season under Mikel Arteta, those two in midfield will be very compact, very tight, have both strengths of each other's play, complement each other brilliantly, and they will be absolutely key to Ghana's way of playing football heading into the tournament. Now, of course, they definitely will have a chip on their shoulder heading into the tournament based off that 2010 campaign. Of course, they did qualify for the next World Cup in 2014, however, they did get bundled out in the group stage. So it will be interesting whether or not they do carry that burden of expectation that was put on them post 2010 World Cup. However, it's a completely different group. They need to put that aside and really focus on what they can do, because they've got fantastic talent in the attacking third. And if they can sit back and soak up some pressure and hit teams on the counter attack, Ghana will be a more than dangerous opposition heading into the World Cup and can cause a shock on any given day. So this is probably one of the most competitive groups heading into the tournament, and Ghana potentially the least favourite to get through the group, but can definitely cause a shock on any given day, and will be a team to watch heading into Qatar. So yes, that is it. Thank you all very much for watching another video here on the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel, where we preview Group H heading into the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Make sure you leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure you leave your predictions of who you think will qualify from this group in the comment section below. Thank you all very much for the support on all the group previews so far. It means the world to us here at the Inner Sanctum. Make sure you subscribe to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel, like the video. See you guys next time, and goodbye.